Well, I am aware that there has been another attack on the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, and I would love to discuss that story, but frankly, there's not enough info on it yet, and really, most of what I'm seeing at this point are rumors. So I'm going to talk about the Wu flu. Because we do have some more information about that, despite all the censorship that's going on with the Chinese and how the government is pretty much pulling off all of the normal open source information, open source intelligence that people on the internet would rely on. You have the good folks like accounts like Elint News or Intel Crab that would go in and try and snatch off of Chinese social media everything that is being taken down by the government. And so we don't have a real idea about how bad this whole Wuhan coronavirus is, or the Wu flu, as the Twitter weebs have dubbed it. I'm not sure. Mr. Mediocure, I think, has done a lot to promote that characterization of it, or maybe he even came up with it himself. But it's caught on, and I think that's a pretty good nickname, especially since coronavirus is a broad term. It's like saying influenza. But if you say the Wu flu, well, everyone knows what you're talking about. You're talking about Corona-chan, chowing down on some bat soup. And as adorable as she may be, she hasn't gone too easy on her fans over in China. Perhaps they haven't done enough to appease her, in the same way that the West Africans finally appeased Ebola-chan. Because every day now, since I started following this, the official number of people who are afflicted with this whole illness has been rising rapidly. Just yesterday, I think around this time, I was checking the tracker, and it was something like 1,400 people, I think, worldwide that had this coronavirus, that had the Wu flu, and now it's up to about 2,100. And I'm using the tracker that was built by Johns Hopkins University. They have a great, it's sort of a map that has everywhere that's going with bigger circles and things over cities to show where the number of cases are. Of course, most of the things outside of China are just one or two cases. You can really see how this thing's spreading. And the great thing about this tracker is it has not only the number of confirmed cases that are officially recognized by the Chinese government and the governments around the world, but it has the number of deaths so far and the number of people who have actually recovered. And so what is it we've been hearing about from all these folks who have been saying, in the media, that, oh no, nobody should be concerned about this. China's got it under control. It's not that bad. Just look at the death count. Not that many people have died. Sure, 2,000 people have it, but only 52 or 56, actually I think it's 56 now, people have died from this. So that's a pretty low ratio. It's only about 2.5%. So why should you be that concerned with it? I mean, think about how many people die from the regular flu. And it is true that a lot more people so far have died from the regular flu, but supposedly it's a very dumb comparison because the regular flu is already all around the world, spread around the world. So lots more people, have gotten the flu, the normal flu, the common influenza that is seasonal. And then, two, this whole coronavirus thing, according to China, started on December 1st. That's when they first discovered this disease. So it's been not even 2 months that this thing has existed. And there are 56 people dead that they're willing to tell us about. Okay, so that's one reason why it's very dumb for anybody to compare the Wu flu to the normal flu, because the normal flu, or because the coronavirus thing has only been around for less than 2 months now, so you can't compare it to a whole year of the flu, which has already been spread around the world. The number of deaths. And the other thing is, it's misleading to say that this thing only has like a 2.5% kill rate, because that's assuming that everyone who has it right now is going to recover. The fact of the matter is that it's not like 2,100 people had it and then no longer have it, and only 56 of those people died. No, 2,100 people are inflicted with it right now officially. I'm sure the number is much higher than that. But 2,100 people that we know about, and 56 people have died so far. But how many of those people have actually recovered out of that 2,100? Is about 52. Okay, so more people have died from this disease than have recovered. So you can't just count those 2,100 people and saying, oh, well, they survived. They're not dead yet, so its kill count is only, 2.5%. No, if you look at the amount of people who have survived versus died from this disease, it's over 50% have died. So that seems to be setting off a lot of alarm bells to me. I don't know why more people aren't talking about this. And I just saw another report that something like 600 or 700 people right now in China are officially in critical condition. Critical, that's worse than serious. Critical is like, you're about to die. Okay, and this is a disease that, from as far as we know, there's no treatment for it yet because they just discovered it. There's no vaccine or anything, and they don't really know what to do other than to try and, pump the fluid out of your lungs. But they can only do that for so many people. The equipment that it takes to pump the fluid out of your lungs, they don't have, thousands of those machines. And so while they're trying to save one person's life, they're probably going to let 10 other people die. And so I would say that, if you've got 700 and some people who are in critical condition right now, a lot of those people are not going to survive. Because, again, we don't know that much about the virus yet, but from what we understand, the nature of it seems to be that once you get to this point of no return to where you're not coming back, if you have this thing and your lungs start to fill up, and you start to get, you have a lot of congestion in your chest, it doesn't get any better from there. You just get worse and worse and worse until you can't breathe anymore. If that wasn't scary enough, keep in mind that everything that I've been saying so far in the past 6.5 minutes has been in line with the official narrative. Okay, so based on everything that the Chinese government, very honest people, have been telling us, that's how bad things sound. Things don't sound too good. From the looks of it, this virus has something like an over 50% kill rate, based on what they're telling us. And the numbers of people who are infected, it keeps rising by hundreds every day, and that'll probably grow exponentially, because the virus is spreading outward. But not to sound too crazy, stay with me for a minute and consider that maybe the Chinese government is not telling us the full truth. Crazy, I know. The idea that government, let alone the Chinese government, could be lying to us that's a radical idea. But I'm telling you, we should consider the possibility for just a second. Because let's look at how the Chinese government has responded to this whole thing. This is supposedly, out of a nation of, 2.5 billion people, this has supposedly affected maybe 2,000 people in China. And yet, based on this, the Chinese government has quarantined entire cities, multiple cities. Last count I saw yesterday was 15. I'm sure it's probably up to 20 by now because they keep adding more and more to this quarantine. And that doesn't mean that they're telling people, hey, you probably shouldn't come into work and, and if you're not feeling too good, you should stay home. No, they're walling these cities off. They're sending the military in with hazmat suits and decked out in full gear with all their guns and everything to stand at the exits to all these cities and block people from leaving. They're shutting down all the train stations. They've got armed guards standing in front of the train station so that nobody gets on board a train. And I've seen them, they're sending dump trucks loaded full of rocks and dirt to try and, build makeshift barricades to block all the exits. They're just dumping stuff in the roads so that people can't drive out of the cities, so that they're all stuck there. And, so far, I think the quarantine has affected now over 50 million people. And again, as fast as things are changing, that number is only going to rise. And you're telling me they're doing this for a disease that's only affected 2,000 people, that's only killed like 50? Based on how the Chinese government is responding, do you think that maybe, just maybe, the Wu flu is, a little more dangerous than that? A lot of the projections that we've been seeing from the mathematicians in America, the doctors here trying to plug in what they know about the virus so far and running it into their simulators and their mathematical models, which, again, in economics, I'm not a fan of mathematical modeling. I don't think it works very well when you're trying to model human behavior. But this is, the behavior of a virus, which I think somewhat can be mapped out mathematically based on what we know about statistics and people moving around and things. And their models are showing that, hey, there should be well over 100,000 people, who have caught this virus by February. And yet here we are at the end of January, and supposedly only 2,000 people have the virus. Out of it would seem to me that in order for that target to be met of over 100,000, that mathematically a lot more people should, have the virus by now. And in fact, we're getting some leaks out of China that would seem to support that. There have been, again, unconfirmed videos, because you can't confirm these things, because these are people essentially trying to sneak information out under the Japanese, or the Great Chinese Firewall. And we've seen, videos of, there was one where a doctor seemed to be secretly recorded, where he was talking about how a city that he's in, which isn't even Wuhan, to where they had all, three hospitals all full of people coming down with the Wu flu, which, again, in and of itself, you would think, well, at least that's hundreds of people. And then a couple more of videos of nurses talking about how the real number is closer to 100,000, and these were two separate videos that were getting leaked out of China, and pretty much the common thing that seems to be whenever you have videos of these doctors coming in, because there's also ones of doctors there's one of a nurse weeping, and of a doctor breaking down from stress and things and going nuts. And the common thread here seems to be that the situation is much worse than the Chinese government is letting on, which again is what you would expect. I mean, even if this were a Western government, you would expect them to lie to some extent to try and calm people down so that there wasn't a mass panic. But, the Chinese government, I would imagine, would, lie about this sort of thing more than almost anyone else, and give us a picture that is as far from the truth as possible. And so based on, the mathematical projections and these videos we're seeing coming out of China, I think it probably is safe to assume that the real number is not around 2,000, but rather in the tens of thousands, maybe even closer to the six-figure range, which we should be approaching here somewhere soon based on the modeling. And if that's the case, it certainly would make this outbreak much worse than SARS or MERS. Which I believe MERS affected maybe 8,500 people, and these things were scary at the time. People were very afraid of what was going to happen, with those two illnesses back, a few years ago. But here we are. We're only like a week into worrying about the Wu flu, or the Uwu flu, and things are happening very fast as far as all this is concerned. Certainly faster than they can do the proper research to try and develop some kind of vaccine. I mean, the way that this is spreading. I mean, here in America, as of right now, I believe we've got 5 cases, 2 discovered today alone, and that's not a lot, obviously. 5 people coming down sick with it. None of them died so far out of 320 million people. But if you think about it, these folks these are probably folks who visited China recently. At least I know 3 of them were. The odds that they didn't interact and infect many other people since coming back into the country are probably pretty low, which means that this thing is out in the wild now in the United States. There are people carrying the Wu flu who will, start to show symptoms within a couple weeks, because this thing takes a couple weeks, I guess, to germinate isn't really the right term, but maybe gestate. Incubation period, that's what I was trying to think of. The incubation period for this virus seems to be about a couple weeks, but you can still spread the thing when you're not showing symptoms. And so there are people in America right now who interacted with these 6 individuals, let alone, other individuals who came from China that are infected with this now and don't know it yet, who are, again, still going about their daily lives and won't know for another week or 2 that they also now have contracted the Wu flu. And so this thing will start to spread throughout our country. And, let's say for a second that, sure, the Chinese are doing a great job at managing this, and their draconian, totalitarian quarantine of locking millions and millions of people into their 6 cities and forcing them to live together and not allowing them to escape or contact their family or get new food or whatever. Let's just say that is going to work perfectly, and that nothing more bad will come out of China and this will be contained. Well, here in America, we're not going to be able to enforce any kind of quarantine like that. This virus is going to spread pretty much unabated. And so it's pretty safe to assume that within about a month, we'll probably be hearing a lot more about this, and that there will be quite a decent many cases in America. Maybe as many cases of this in America as there are, officially in China right now. Because if what they're saying, the early research about this is true, and that you are still very contagious when you're not showing symptoms, well, then there's no way to contain this. And so on that optimistic note, I think I'll end things here. If you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.